Welcome to another episode of the Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp. Now, Kevin is traveling and going to be appearing from an undisclosed location, so I am in communication with Kevin. We're just working on getting him online right now, and I definitely want to thank all of our generous Patreon sponsors and people who are watching on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I want to remind everyone that you can also sponsor Kevin by going to patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp. And of course, Kevin is a recovering CIA agent, as he tells us frequently, and it's important that Kevin has our support. Part of what is done to people like Kevin, who are whistleblowers and come forward with their stories, is they are shut out from normal jobs and really don't have a lot of access to income or any of the types of things that ordinarily people would use to support their families. So it's critically important that we support the whistleblowers and the brave individuals who come forward on Crowdsource the Truth to share their stories. Now, let's see if we can, what's happening here? So Kevin is on Skype. Let's get him on there now, and hopefully he'll be ready to go. Kevin has prepared an exciting PowerPoint for us tonight about the black budget of some of these dark operations. Yeah, I'm trying you on Skype, Kevin. This is interesting. We're having some odd difficulties getting connected. Let's see what we can make happen here. There's no shortage of craziness. It's not connecting for some reason. I'm texting with him. So, welcome everyone. Let me get Discord fired up here so we can interact with our viewers. What we'll do is, if I'm not able to connect with Kevin on Skype or appear in, we will get him on the telephone and we'll have audio only. I'm not sure why we're not able to connect. We do this all the time. We'll just have to give it another moment here. Very strange. Very strange indeed. Let me see what we can do here as far as regular telephone communications. Not reaching Kevin on Skype. So we can just try it another way. Sorry everyone, Kevin and I have been in communication for the past several minutes. Did not anticipate that there'd be a problem in doing this. Let's just see if we can. Hey Kevin. That's very strange. Why don't you try dialing me from Skype? Are you able to do that? No. Just NYC Jason on Skype. We'll get you right to me. Yeah. We'll have you on there in just a second. As always, you know, there we go. Yeah. So we're live right now. I think it's sometimes frustrating for people to have to ride with us while we have some of these technical glitches. But of course, you know, we're always coming at you guys from different locations. Kevin's someplace new. I'm in the usual spot. Okay, so here we go. Skype. Oh, is this a different Skype address that you're using? It is. Yeah, that was the problem. Okay, so we're going to have you on there in just 1 second, Kevin. There we go. All kinds of technical gotchas that can sneak up. Okay, I've got you now.
All right, super.
Okay.
Good.
So let me get
Always
this.
a challenge.
always something new.
Yeah.
Let me get the screen share going so that you can see what we'll be showing everyone today. That is a handsome haircut you've got there, Kevin.
You thank my wife and groomer for that, man.
And of course, you're in yet another hotel room. I believe that says screen share. Okay. So Kevin is traveling around the country to spread the word here. We're getting jammed up here, Kevin. Whoop.
Really?
Okay.
I can hear and see you pretty good.
It's not allowing me to start the screen share for some reason.
Huh.
Let's just give it another second. Okay, here we go. That should be good. So without any further ado, Kevin, of course, you've prepared for us today another one of your incredibly informative and detailed PowerPoint presentations. The only other place that people are seeing this sort of thing is in the CIA itself. So of course, I think most of our viewers do not want to risk having the interior of their house painted with chemical weapons. So rather than joining the CIA, it's a great idea for people to be joining us right here on patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And each week we're coming to everyone with these really unique and amazing intelligence assessments. Why don't you take it away, Kevin?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Of course, the reason why I've come out and I'm doing this is I come from the belly of the beast, and I've seen the power of secrecy abused for illegal and criminal activity and cover up. So that's kind of my mission, to expose the unconstitutional activities of the secret parts of our government. And as part of that, we're going to talk tonight about the secret budgets that the CIA, NSA, and Department of Defense have, and how it's kind of a shell game. They move funds around, hide them, use them for covert programs that Congress doesn't know about. And the important thing about this is, what should be a constitutional government, is that these are the tax dollars from the American people that are funding things that they know nothing about, including human rights violations and even worse at times. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. And what I do is I take my experience from the inside, having seen this personally, which when I got higher up in the agency was kind of heartbreaking to see how dark it was the higher you got up, because I was a dedicated officer. But they are doing things that are illegal. They are covering things up, including the budget and where the money is going. So if you got the next slide, Jason, we can go with that.
Sure. We'll get the PowerPoint going. Can you see that on the screen share, Kevin?
Got it. Beautiful.
Okay, perfect. We're ready to go.
All right, let's go to the next one. All right, let's talk about the secret budget. And as you click, Jason, and the points I put in there come up, we'll discuss them one by one, which I think is the best way to do it. The secret budget, specifically for the CIA, which is the largest secret budget, is only known to a few people within the intelligence agency. So it's not known by most congressmen. It's also not known by most management in the CIA. As usual, just the top level select few. And as I mentioned, the CIA is the largest recipient of secret budget dollars, tax dollars, of any of the intelligence agencies. Now, what they do is, and I'll talk more about this as we go along, they actually in their budgets add false line items in the federal budget and list the money that they're receiving as coming or going to other agencies instead of the CIA. For example, they've used the Health and Human Services, put a line item in that budget when it was actually a CIA covert operation. Congress doesn't have access. These are billions of dollars in spending for the CIA, the NSA especially, and it's a huge amount of money. So what the CIA does with this massive billions of budget, uses it for covert operations, many of which Congress doesn't know about, some of which the president doesn't even know about. And in the past, some of it have amounted essentially to genocide. For example, Operation Phoenix in Vietnam, where they sent teams in to assassinate with assassination pistols any Vietnamese citizen that they thought was pro-communist, using Americans' tax dollars. That's how things can go bad when secrecy is in charge. There's no entry in any budget for the CIA's fleet of armed drones anywhere. It's not in there, although millions are going to that. There's a broad line item All it does is in the budget say that it is for the CIA's expanded paramilitary role. That's it. Now that is a huge, broad statement that covers a lot of things that the CIA is doing. There's in that budget. Now this is as close as we can get. I want you to look at this figure: 2.5 billion with a B for quote unquote covert action programs. No definition of what those programs are, no authority by Congress to approve or disapprove those programs. It's all done in secret. $2.5 billion. For example, the CIA paid, and I was a supervisor for the protective detail on Hamid Karzai in Afghanistan just after he was brought into office. The CIA paid Karzai millions of dollars in cash, bags of cash, of course, that none of us knew about. And what Karzai did was turn around and give that cash to the Taliban. So we had a covert program. See, these things, when they're done in secret, they fail miserably many, many times. The CIA, the U.S. government, which primarily does not know about this, the CIA is paying militias in Afghanistan and Africa, paying them operational money with our tax dollars. And how many of you out there, our sponsors, even know that this is happening? And that's the point. Okay, Jason, go ahead. So the central node of the shadow government, I've covered this in other lectures, but I want you to look at that in terms of the budget and what this secret budget covers that the CIA is doing. So you can click through those, Jason, if you will. Despite what they tell you, the Director of National Intelligence was appointed to oversee the CIA, but the CIA still calls the shots. Nothing has changed there. They control multiple defense and intelligence corporations. I'll talk about one of those, which is shocking, the amount of tax money it uses and what it uses for. They manipulate presidential political decisions. We saw that with George Tenet manipulating willing George W. Bush with false intelligence, leading to the worst military movement in history, and that's the Iraq War. Now, in this covert budget, the CIA has the power to start wars in other countries. Syria, for example. They've got the authority to torture, use drones. They've staged 80 coups overseas and multiple false flags. And we'll probably do a show later on false flags created by the government. They're accurate, they're factual. And as I mentioned, the CIA itself, its covert capability was created with no congressional approval and no restrictions. These are unelected officials in the CIA engaging in basically nation destruction and coups, and they are not an elected branch of government. I've mentioned in other speeches that they manipulate Congress with the power of secrecy by denying them clearances and making the budget secret so Congress can't have access to it. They manipulate the judiciary with the abuse of the state secrets privilege. That is my mission. I saw them use that to cover up negligence, illegal activity, and the injury of my family, using the state secrets privilege as a tyrannical tool to silence what they did. So these are your tax dollars. This is what your tax dollars are being used for. And the question I always ask to audiences, did you approve any of this? So you click on the next one, Jason, if you would. Your tax dollars were used for death squads and mercenaries in Chile, funding Augusto Pinochet, funding Al-Qaeda through Libya, thanks to Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton and Barack Obama. And those weapons wound up in the hands of Al-Qaeda and eventually to ISIS. That's Abu Ghraib prison, run with secret tax dollars by Lockheed Martin. And they classify everything. Everything they don't want Congress, the American people, seeing, they classify. So the voters and those who are supposed to be in charge of the government have no idea what they're doing in these operations. That's an example of a document they gave to Congress. The drone program. So far, the CIA has droned 8 wedding parties, including everybody in the party, for a suspected terrorist. Now, I don't think any of us paid for that particular kind of attack. They always tell us, well, this is against terrorism, but they don't tell us how many innocent civilians they kill. So, and we're paying for that. Now, I want people to look at this, Jason, because it's important. Congress is the voice, or at least should be the voice of the American people. It's the only voice we have in Washington. We've lost that voice because of the shadow government. Congress has the legal authority via the Constitution to control the CIA, and it can do that through its budget. Problem: the CIA set this up going all the way back in 1947. The CIA classifies and withholds the documents necessary for Congress to even see its budget. So Congress can't control the CIA at all. It has left the Constitution. It is an outside Constitution organization. Well, we have congressional oversight. We have the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Don't they oversee and manage the CIA? Well, no, they don't. They're a sham. You look at Dianne Feinstein, whose driver was a Chinese spy. The oversight committees are a joke. I put some things recently on fortheloveoffreedom.net proving that, even an actual memo sent to the intelligence committees on a serious subject of national security that they completely ignored. The military-industrial complex and intelligence lobbyists, I'll show you how much money they spend in Washington on these programs, and it'll probably raise your eyebrows. So the lobbyists control congressmen and senators. I'll speak about that in a moment. Sadly, there's a revolving door from Congress to the military-industrial complex, from the CIA to the military-industrial complex, from the Department of Justice to the military-industrial complex. For example, James Comey, when Hillary greased the skids for him to leave and go sit on the board of Lockheed Martin, James Comey made $6 million in 1 year. 1 year. No wonder he supports Hillary, no matter what. And now, sadly, and we'll do a show on Congress. Congress is now composed of statesmen. You know, the never-Trumpers we're seeing now, both Republicans and Democrats, they're not constitutional representatives anymore. They're statesmen that don't abide by the Constitution and are just concerned with re-election and padding their salaries and all the illegal benefits, essentially, that they get that the American people don't get. But we'll do a show on that for sure. What I've always said, and will continue to say, secrecy will always breed corruption. When the government does something in secret that the American people can't oversee, it will go corrupt every single time. I'll give you a prime example. There's a classified signals intelligence program that was called Vesper Lilith. It was a classified program using, of course, our tax budget dollars. And look at this next one. It is now the subject of a fraud indictment. This program was committing fraud with government dollars. And what they did was they hid this secret program involving NSA specifically. They hid it from Congress and the people by claiming that it was sponsored by the Department of Health and Human Services in the budget. It literally was listed under Health and Human Services, not the CIA or NSA budget. So obviously it was a joint effort with the National Security Agency and to hide this budget from especially Congress and primarily the Government Accounting Office, which oversees the budgets, and they have completely hidden it from the only governing body for accountability that we have. Now let's look at some of the things that they've done with these secret budgets. When things are in secret, abominations occur. Here's a prime example I mentioned earlier. The CIA supported Augusto Pinochet and his junta in Chile, 1973, through all the way up to 1990 with secret budget dollars. They murdered 40,018 civilians by Pinochet's mercenaries, paid for by the CIA. 200 civilians disappeared. Not sure where they went, whether they were tortured, pushed out of helicopters, they don't know. The CIA staged false terrorist attacks in Italy. They had a desk in the Vatican, a CIA officer in the Vatican working with the Vatican for CIA operations. Wouldn't be surprised that that desk is still there now.
Now, Kevin, we've heard a lot about Gladio from Sibel Edmonds, but I understood that Sibel was with the FBI. How does Gladio play into the Vatican and Pinochet?
I would strongly, the Vatican doesn't play into Pinochet. This is just another example.
Got it.
Of overt operation. I would recommend people read Operation Gladio, the unholy alliance between the CIA, the Catholic Church, and I think the Mafia. It's written by Paul Williams. Operation Gladio. He's got 2,000 footnotes in there proving the CIA's connection to false terrorist attacks. I think 419 people were killed by the CIA to make it look like the Italian government did it. Operation Gladio by Paul Williams. He proves it. Torture, rendition, and secret prisons. It was not just waterboarding. It was it was worse than that. We turned them over to countries that practiced severe torture so we could deny it. I mentioned the drone program. There is actually a presidential kill list that the president has, a list of people that they're going to kill. And what has changed there, everyone, is it's no longer exact intelligence that the person is a terrorist. It's just suspicious behavior that makes them look like a terrorist. And they can take out an entire wedding party based on a suspicion that one of the members is a terrorist. Of course, the CIA has done MK Ultra, mind control experience, Operation Paperclip, bringing Nazi scientists in, falsifying their paperwork and hiring them with the CIA. Operation Mockingbird, which you and I've talked about, still goes on today, controlling the news media, manipulating the news media. And then we see gun running in Benghazi and the mess that the entire country of Libya has become a mess. These are all done through covert secret budgets. And how many of us out there even knew that we were paying for these things? And it's from our tax dollars. That's the critical point. And we mentioned Operation Mockingbird, the manipulation of the news media. We've got an entire show on that. If you look at this tree over there, these are the roots of the CIA. And click it again there, Jason. The CIA, and you can see from this slide, the CIA has blood on its roots. And click it again, that blood goes up through the tree and it produces bloody fruit. The root is still there, the bloody fruit is still there. We saw that in Syria. There have been 500,000 people killed in the Syrian conflict started by CIA covert operations. And of course, we've got the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower called it the military-industrial congressional complex because Congress was so deeply involved in it through contributions by military-industrial contractors that they are just as connected. So Congress is a part of this. They're receiving huge donations from military-industrial complex contractors. Now, some of you may have heard about this, some of you may not. The Department of Defense, IG, found that there is $2 trillion missing from the Department of Defense. They don't know who spent it. They don't know where it went. There's a lot of speculation about what they used that secret $2 trillion for. But what they've just done, Jason, is this. People got wise to it. People were starting to go after the Department of Defense for this missing huge amounts of money. The GAO was starting to hit them. They were going to be in a lot of trouble, and eventually whatever this covert program or programs were, probably eventually would have come out. So what just happened? Legislation was passed where they moved this $2 trillion into the secret budget under the Director of National Intelligence, calling it a national security issue.
That's
so
amazing.
Now
it's missing, but yet they can move it. And we famously heard about this when Cynthia McKinney questioned Donald Rumsfeld there in Congress. Isn't that what she was talking about, the missing $2 trillion?
Well, I've got a quote from him coming up just along those lines. Yes, yeah.
Very good.
The missing $2 trillion is now hidden in a secret budget under the Director of National Intelligence. The top 5 military-industrial contractor CEOs make an average of $2.1 million, and actually I think it's $2.4 million a year. That is what they make a year, and I mentioned Comey made $6 million in a year. I'm going to talk about Lockheed when we get to this, but Lockheed Martin is the surveillance arm of the CIA and NSA. They engage in quote-unquote information processing. What do you suppose information processing is? They got to gather that information through surveillance and tracking before they process it. Lockheed works, this is a MIC, military industrial complex, contractor for the CIA. They work for the NSA. They work for the IRS, tracking our tax data. They work for the Pentagon and Pentagon covert programs, and they work for the Census Bureau, collecting data on the American population.
You know, Kevin, it's very interesting to see the IRS in there. That's not necessarily a 3-letter agency we would expect to see among CIA and NSA. But after our appearance last week at the really excellent Operation Classified event hosted by John B. Wells, you and I had the opportunity to meet Sidney Powell, who's done incredible work and informed us that Steve Stockman, the former U.S. representative who was going after Lois Lerner for her to be held accountable for the things that she's done in persecuting the Tea Party and basically, you know, auditing conservatives while totally ignoring the crimes of the Clinton Foundation, landed Steve Stockman in jail for 10 years. So that's something that we'll be looking into some more in the near future.
Yes, and I'll tell you, I'd recommend Sidney Powell's book, License to Lie. I think everybody should get a copy of License to Lie and read it, because it shows the absolute corruption at the top levels of the DOJ. It's a must-read, in my opinion.
Definitely.
All right, I mentioned Comey a few times, so let's move to the next one. Now, the reason I do this is kind of multi-learning channels where you and I are talking, and instead of just a couple talking heads, I like to throw these slides up so people can actually see this while we're talking, and it just it helps everyone retain the information better. This is the same format I used when I was a senior briefer at the agency, and it's worked well, so that's why we do it this way. The Federation of American Scientists, which I would encourage everyone to check out, it is a watchdog group that is keeping an eye on the intelligence agencies, and they're really good. They've got some very reputable people that are members or on their board, and they're a watchdog for the CIA and the NSA especially. This is what they said, quote, "Government agencies may remove or omit budget information from their public financial statements. It may present expenditures that are associated with one budget line item as if they were associated with another, like the Health and Human Services, in order to, quote unquote," there it is, the same old one, "protect classified information." The excuse that they use to hide money, break the law, and it's getting really old. So go ahead. Another quote from Federation of American Scientists, or FAS, F-A-S. "Government agencies may modify information required by financial standards." In other words, they'll fake information in GAO audits. They'll fake the information so that it can't be known what covert programs they've used the money for. In their public financial statements, they hide the money and they hide the program. This is required information with the GAO audit, except for the CIA and the NSA. They misrepresent, as FAST says, the actual spending amounts associated with these line items. So they don't list the amount of money that is spent on the operation in Syria. So Congress and the GAO don't know how much was spent to start and propagate that war. And why? Well, they have to do that because, quote, "classified information will not be disclosed." The abuse, I call it the tyranny of secrecy again. Here we go, Donald Rumsfeld, the $2.5 trillion. This is what he said, a couple of quotes. "According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy." Well, I'd say it's the Pentagon secret bureaucracy. "In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death." Donald Rumsfeld. For him to come out and admit that, something that, well, it's not, I think he probably knew where the money went, but anyway. This is, and I think what I want people to remember, this is the largest government financial deception in U.S. history. In U.S. history, they hid $2.3 trillion, and now they've moved it under the DNI for national security so no one can see. This is secret government budget money laundering in huge amounts.
And Kevin, wasn't there some statement by Donald Rumsfeld that he was going to go to war with the Pentagon, and then like the next day it got hit by a missile and all of the ONI forensic accountants that were looking into this $2.3 trillion were killed?
What a coincidence, huh?
Exactly.
I mean, the more we dig into this stuff and the more we give these programs to people, the more they're going to understand the incredible power and extent of the shadow government and the deep state and how much it controls our government and our country. Now, I want to talk about this. Lockheed Martin. This might as well be an agency of the federal government, which of course it is not. They spent $21 million on congressional lobbying and campaign contributions. We know that members of the Armed Services Committee get about $700,000 a year in contributions from companies like Lockheed Martin. 21 million spent to what? Influence Congress and influence the decisions. Does it influence them? You bet it does. That's why we see congressmen promise one thing and then they get into office and they do the exact opposite. Follow the money, Jerry, as the movie said. Their top contributor to the House Armed Services Committee chairman, I mentioned that, and all the 48 members. They have 140,000 employees, most, if not all, bound by a government secrecy agreement from discussing what they do. And they have facilities. Again, remember, this is an arm of the NSA and the CIA, a private arm. They have facilities in 46 states within the United States. More on Lockheed. Look at this. Lockheed receives $1 of every $14 spent by the Pentagon. $1 in every $14 spent by the Pentagon using our tax dollars goes to Lockheed Martin. It's government contracts. Some have called it, I have it here, a Lockheed Martin tax, because the amount that Lockheed Martin, the amount of tax dollars Lockheed uses on behalf of the CIA, NSA, IRS, and others, amounts to about $260 per tax-paying household in the United States. So because of the taxes that Lockheed is using per household, essentially they're spending $260 of each household taxes for these programs. And very concerning is Lockheed is running its own foreign policy. They make foreign policy decisions that are not from elected officials. They're from their CEOs and their boards. Examples, hiring interrogators. Lockheed Martin hires the interrogators and pays them for Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib, where the abominations took place. Lockheed Martin was paying for that through secret budgets. They have a private intelligence network in Pakistan, Lockheed does.
Wow, I don't think I knew that. I wonder if that's related to the ISI and Mr. Owan.
I know it's related to the ISI, I can tell you that. And if Mr. Owan was connected directly or indirectly with the ISI, then that would be a yes.
Wow.
Now, what is bizarre, Lockheed Martin has a program paid for by the government to monitor every single piece of mail that goes through the United States Post Office. So when your Aunt Maud sends you a letter, that letter is collected, photographed, and stored in a database via Lockheed Martin. So they know what piece of mail you received, from who, and when you received it.
But Kevin, are they opening the mail? They're reading the letters, or they're just logging the address and stuff?
I know they've opened my mail, but that's a different story. No, what they're doing is they're recording the address and the addresser and the addressee, who it's coming from and who it's going to, and when it went through on regular mail.
Wow.
Now, this is what they make using our tax dollars in secret budgets that we know nothing about. They produce the nasty cluster bombs. They design nuclear weapons, and they make fighter planes, and a whole lot of other arms and heavy weapons. The F-3 Lightning, which was pretty much a lousy fighter jet they produced, and then they sold it to over a dozen foreign countries. So they're one of the U.S. government's arms dealers to foreign countries like Saudi Arabia. And as I think I've mentioned or alluded to, guess who the biggest arms dealer to foreign countries in the world is? Us, the United States. So I want people to look at this, because I'm passionate about this slide, obviously. How much does the government spend in tax dollars on these programs? And as we click through these, this was just increased, by the way, to $59.4 billion is the total intelligence agency budget that we know of. $18.4 billion for the military intelligence budget.
Kevin, I don't think the average viewer would have an immediate idea of what's the difference between an intelligence agency and a military intelligence agency.
Well, you've got remember, under the DNI, you've got 17 intelligence agencies under the Director of National Intelligence, Army, Navy, Air Force. They all have their OSI. They all have their intelligence services, many times duplicate what the CIA is doing and compete against the CIA. So military intelligence for each of the four branches of the military, each has their own intelligence apparatus, and that's where this 18.4 billion figure comes from.
Wow.
598 billion with a B is the total defense budget. And I have to say here, the interest that we're paying on the national debt now equals that. The interest on our national debt over $2 trillion, and if you count the 2.3 trillion missing, that's actually a debt of over 4 trillion. The total defense budget is 598 billion of that, and it's massive. Now look at this: 150 billion dollars is the cost of our overseas military bases, many of which are doing nothing and are not necessary. The one in Germany, we don't need anymore. It's millions and millions of dollars. It's been proposed to bring those back, and of course Congress raises a stink because they're getting money and contributions from the companies that do this. Now here, look at this, and Saudi Arabia is at the top of this list. I guess Israel would be second. $5.9 billion in military aid to foreign countries, some of which hate us. For example, we give millions to the government of Pakistan, and the government of Pakistan hates us, spies on us, harbors terrorists, and on it goes. Saudi Arabia is an Islamic Wahhabi country, and what they teach, including here in the United States, is the overthrow of Western governments, and we're paying them money. Now look at this: $4 billion is paid to congressional lobbyists or by congressional lobbyists to influence Congress. Do you think it probably has an impact on Congress's decisions or congressmen and women's decisions on things? $4 billion? You bet it does. Sadly, Congress has been bought or paid for. This is over $800 billion. I think it's more, and I've been told by a good source, it's actually closer to $1 trillion is the total shadow government budget, Department of Defense budget. It's about a $1 trillion of tax revenue. Now here we go. So we got the government spending really, I think an accurate figure, more accurate figure is $1 trillion. We have the government spending $1 trillion on these things, including arms to foreign governments. And here's the cost to Americans' vital security. The first one, people should be outraged. Social Security has been stolen by Congress. The money that people contributed their entire life and put in the Social Security fund, Congress has taken all of it and spent it on their pet programs, and now it's in danger of insolvency. If that doesn't make anybody mad, it certainly should. Medicare, well, you'll hear these congressmen and senators say, we can't afford Medicare anymore because it'll drain the federal budget. We can't afford it. I'll tell you where you can take the money from Medicare for people that need health insurance. You can take it maybe from that $59.4 billion for intelligence covert programs. How about that? Use that to help the American people out, what you're supposed to be doing. Medicaid, they want to defund Medicaid to the point where it's almost defunded out of existence. These are people that have no health insurance of all ages and can go into bankruptcy or worse, not be able to get medical care if they defund this program. Healthcare, it took decades, and that includes the Republican Congress, to do anything about healthcare. While people suffered, went bankrupt, look at the VA, people died because of this negligence on the part of our Congress. And now, the new health insurance plan, I want people to get a hold of this. The new insurance program that the Republicans, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, I'm an independent, so I'm an equal opportunity exposure on these things. But now the new Republican health care plan does not cover pre-existing conditions. Now, how many people do you know that have a pre-existing condition? Probably a half or 2/3 of Americans have some kind of serious pre-existing condition that the Republican health plan will not cover. No excuse. Our infrastructure is crumbling. They're trying to tap money. Trump's trying to track down money or trap money to fund that. And then lastly, in our economy, unemployment has improved. We still have unemployment, but we still have millions of people that are under the poverty level in this country. And these people are suffering. So why take the money from vital American security and use it to pay for secret budgets that are doing things that we didn't vote for and using the tax dollars of these people who they're draining their retirement and their health care from? So who pays for all this, these secret government budgets, this $1 trillion of programs that we don't know about? Who pays for this? You do. That's your 1040 tax form. They use that money, tax on your income and other things, to pay for these secret budgets that you know nothing about, for covert programs that you know nothing about, and things that you haven't approved, nor has Congress, because they're hidden in secret. Now we're going to roll it up with this one, because we can't have a discussion on secret budgets without the Federal Reserve. There's Alan Greenspan. I have a quote from Alan Greenspan in here. This is what he said, quote, "There is no other agency of government." Now that's a lie right there. The Federal Reserve is not an agency of the federal government. It's a private organization. Greenspan lied through his teeth right there. But let's go on. There's no other agency of the federal government that can overrule actions that we, the Federal Reserve, take. In other words, the U.S. government cannot control the Federal Reserve, which is true. The relationship between the Federal Reserve, the President, and Congress don't frankly matter. End quote. So they're unelected. They answer to no one, they don't answer to Congress, and they will have nothing to do with the American people. Let's go to the next one, and we'll talk about how they control the entire U.S. economy here. Federal Reserve. There are no reserves in the Federal Reserve. They don't have a gold reserve. They don't have a money reserve. This Federal Reserve is a lie. The whole title is a lie. It's not federal, and it has no reserves. It is staffed secretly by international bankers with no loyalty to the U.S. and that actually control our economy. These are foreign international banks, and the members that sit on the board are secret. They will not release their identities. New global economic order, anyone? All their deliberations, board meetings, and the decisions they make for raising interest rates, etc., are done in secret. Hey, what a surprise. Their budget is secret, and they can't be audited to determine where their money goes. This is completely a juggernaut. Congress has no control or access at all, which Greenspan just stated. And they control everything. They control the interest rates on your car, the interest rates on your mortgage, the interest rates on your credit cards, interest rates on loans you get. They decide which businesses will fail or succeed by approving or not approving their loans, or lowering or raising the interest rates on those loans. They can decide which businesses they want to go out of business. Does that sound tyrannical to anyone? Let's look at some more. $2 trillion. Here we go again. The Federal Reserve, in secret, spent $2 trillion to unknown identities. They spent $2 trillion gave $2 trillion of our tax dollars to some unknown identity. We know it was $2 trillion. They refused to disclose who they dispersed that money to. That's an abomination right there. They refuse government accounting office audit, which by law, well, every federal agency has to do, but they're not a federal agency, and that's how they get around that. During the economic crisis, they bailed out AIG, and by the way, AIG has a Islamic Sharia compliant insurance plan that they have developed. But they bailed out AIG to the tune of $182 billion and kept that bailout secret from Congress and the public because they claimed it was, here we go again, national security. They bailed out Goldman Sachs, $162 billion. Goldman Sachs is the global economic master. They have their hands in every pot all the way around the world, and it is a globalist country. Their executives, when they were bailed out, their executives were given bonuses of $15 million for screwing the company up. So as I mentioned, the interest on your house, car, credit cards, and mortgage, all controlled by the Federal Reserve. For example, if you have a $300,000 mortgage and the Fed raises interest rates 1%, your mortgage jumps up, what? I guess it'd be $300. Boom, just like that. Some people, it'll push them over the line. They won't be able to afford their house. I mentioned it controls the interest on personal loans and business loans, whether those loans are approved or not, whether the person or business can afford them or not. And I mentioned it controls which businesses, private businesses, succeed or fail. You remember it printed Q1, 2, 3, and 4. It printed false currency, setting us up for a financial collapse. The derivatives market and other markets, financial markets in the United States, they're digits, they're digital. There's nothing to back them up. Derivatives are an electronic number. They're actually run, the trading is run by computers, and that's why you see these incredible adjustments in the stock market that just happen on the flip of a coin. They're run by computers. So this false currency that they've printed, now we're over $2 trillion in debt. We're facing another recession. It's going to come. The only question is when. They are on the path, if not there, to leading us, our country, along with the International Monetary Fund and other globalist organizations, leading our country to be part of, and I'm calling it here, the global economic order. Obama's administration called it the new international order. George Bush Sr. called it the New World Order. Does the New World Order exist? You bet it does. So I'm glad we're able to get through all of this because it's a lot of information. But we have to understand, in a constitutional government, the people are supposed to run the government. Not true anymore in our country. We're in a post-constitutional government, and I think that scares a lot of people, concerns a lot of people, and it should. So we, as the people, no longer control our own financial security, our houses, cars, and how much we can afford and can't afford. And they control our freedom and are bringing us into the part of the new economic world order. And I want to say here, watch out, people, and I send tweets out on this all the time because I keep an eye on this. They're going to digital currency, and they're going to digital numbers for people. I think it was Capital One or some credit card just announced that they're going from hard credit cards over to a digital number that the person can just type into something or speak into something, and it'll get right into their credit card account. It will go to a digital global economy where each person will have a digital number assigned to them, and each country will have a digital basket of currency, and it will all be done numerically, algorithmically. I think I may have invented a word there. And it will all be done with bits and bytes and digits with no cash at all. And that's when things get really, really ugly.
Well, of course, Kevin, in the case of someone like yourself or any whistleblower who is oppressed by the government, once that change is in place, then certainly it's easy to turn off your ability to buy food, your ability to travel around, just disable your digital currency account, and you're out of business.
That's exactly right. So if there's a group that they're targeting, all they do is just turn off the digital spigot to their bank accounts, and it's over for them. That should cause everybody concern. Because if the government decides, the NRA, a religious group or something like that, decides that they don't like them, they can turn the digital spigot off and drive them into bankruptcy.
And you know, I was in Sweden just a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people there were telling me that there are multiple shops and businesses and things that require you to have this app on your phone to pay for stuff. Now, that's obviously sold to the people of Sweden as some kind of great convenience, but it feeds right into exactly what you're saying. The second you speak out in Sweden, like our friend Biljana Martinovsky, who was fired from her university job for publishing the statistics having to do with gang rape and the alarming rise in that horrendous crime in Sweden. She was simply publishing court and police statistics, and she was fired from her job, accused of being a radical right-wing racist, and blocked from 3 separate jobs. We've heard similar things here in the United States from Robin Gritz. Andrew McCabe basically pushed her out of the FBI. Robin was very involved in dealing with Bob Levinson. I don't have any inside information as far as what she was dealing with. I'm just remarking on things that she's said online and in public. And you and I have speculated that it's quite odd that after this $150 billion cash payout or whatever it was, and all of these hostages from Iran were returned to the United States. Oh, sorry, that might have been Michael Moore we were speaking to this about. Bob Levinson remains in Iran. So is it possible that Bob Levinson knows something that's damaging to the CIA?
Extremely possible. If you remember, I uncovered a vulnerability in the embassies for people to identify our covert agents and assassinate them, and the CIA covered it up, threatened my career, And then eventually I wound up on a base where a family was poisoned. Sure, the CIA would do that.
And certainly if there was some digital currency account that was tied to you, they could just shut that off quite easily. They could blame it on some technical glitch. We've seen in Larry Klayman's FOIA lawsuit against Robert Mueller's special counsel office that there are a lot of ways that lawyers can slow things down and trip people up on technicalities where there's no repercussions. For another, in other words, they could say, oh, there's some kind of technical problem with your digital finance account, tie you up for 2 weeks before they restore the problem. And if you're totally unable to buy food for 2 weeks, if you have a child, if you need medicine, that's a serious problem. So this is really something that we've got to keep our eyes on, Kevin. That was a great presentation, and I think that people are constantly learning from what you're sharing with us here. I've got Discord up, and I want to see if there's anybody who has any questions for us. You know, there's a lot of people who tend to post questions in the comment area of Patreon, so I'll check there as well. But of course, you know, it's a little bit fractured when people are all over the place because we have some people viewing on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I also want to direct those people to go and check out patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp. All of these videos and more appear on Kevin's page, so I think you're going to find some benefit in sponsoring both Crowdsource the Truth and Kevin on Patreon. And of course, Kevin, you've today added an explosive document to fortheloveoffreedom.net. As most people who watch the show know, fortheloveoffreedom.net is Kevin's website, and you can go there to get not only the book From the Company of Shadows, but also the shadow code that Kevin has built into the book that allows you to uncover the redacted information that the CIA illegally kept out of there. Now, the new area that's been added today is this Concealed Documents tab. And in the Concealed Documents tab, Kevin has revealed to everyone, you don't need to be a sponsor on patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp with 2 P's. You don't need to sponsor Kevin to get to this information. All you need to do is visit fortheloveoffreedom.net and click on the Concealed Documents tab. What this new document reveals, well, Kevin, why don't you tell everyone?
Well, yeah, and now that I put this out in public, Jason, you can have all of my suits and my good shoes. This is explosive stuff, and I released it. This is what the CIA concealed after the injury of our family and basically ruined my kids' lives, especially my oldest son, who we may be interviewing in the future. But they sealed all these documents. None of them are classified. All of them revealed a break into our house, the doctor's diagnosis of exposure to poison, the environmental the toxic reports. What you're seeing there is what the document that the CIA feared most, and that was the grievance that I submitted through internal channels. It disappeared from the CIA cable system, which never happens. I confirmed that with the cable chief of the cable operations. The person who was supposed to receive it, that the grievance was against, claimed he never received it. So this is the document that the CIA tried to conceal. What it basically shows is our family was poisoned. I set up an outside company with what I thought was approval to test the house for toxins. And then the day before they canceled that company, I found out because I called them to verify it. They canceled that company and submitted their own. The company that was working for this particular agency wound up doing a so-called environmental test with the doors and windows open, measuring the inside air, not testing the crawl space where the poisons were coming from. So, and that's what I lay out in this grievance. And this is the grievance that they didn't want anybody to see, and they sealed it. If you look through this, it's negligence, it's cover-up. There's nothing classified in this memo. This is what I wrote unclassified when I submitted it. I was a classifying authority, so I classified it appropriately internally, and they used that classified document to suppress. Sadly, what they didn't know is I had the unclassified copy of the document that I wrote before I added the names and details in. So this is completely unclassified, but this is the document that the CIA feared. I understand even the CIA Office of General Counsel joined together with the Office of Inspector General to target me and try to silence me. According to a former IG official, they were terrified that my case and what that site did become public, so they went after me, and not just after me, but my family. So I have finally put these documents out there. I just put a second one out there about a half an hour ago. Why am I doing this? Because people need to know how the government covers up negligence and criminal activity. And I'm showing everyone exactly how they do it. I've taken a gigantic risk, but as I tweeted out earlier this evening, you can mess with a man, but you don't mess with his family. My kids were seriously injured. My ex-wife was injured, never recovered. They were poisoned. Their immune system was destroyed. The CIA was forced to settlement because my evidence was so strong. And one of the documents I just put in there proves that the CIA threatened to lower a fraction of the settlement, and if I didn't accept it, they would invoke the state secrets privilege. That's the smoking gun document right there. They call it the evidentiary privilege. That's the state secrets privilege. There's the document where the CIA writes that if we don't accept a fraction of the settlement, they will invoke the state's secrets privilege. That is illegal use of the privilege. It's tyrannical. It's criminal. And now people know.
Wow. It really is a major release there on fortheloveoffreedom.net. People can also go to the website and purchase Kevin's book. The book is From the Company of Shadows, and fortheloveoffreedom.net is the only place where you can get an autographed copy of the book. So people should definitely go over there and check out this new explosive document that Kevin has released and read the book. This is really an unbelievable story, Kevin, from start to finish, and it just keeps getting crazier and crazier. You've had no restitution whatsoever from the CIA, and people really need to absorb this. It's one thing to think, oh, well, you know, we're just going on YouTube and making videos, but Kevin is really risking his security, his family's safety to do this. So please, everyone, go over to patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp with 2 P's. Sponsor Kevin, purchase the book. You know, Kevin, of course, Christmas is coming up, so people can buy additional copies of the book, give it to members of their family, maybe even people who are skeptical, because I think your book is a good entree for people who are maybe blind to some of this stuff. They might be interested in knowing what the CIA is doing, and it's an inviting kind of tale that draws people in to live the story as you did, as the wrongdoing of the CIA was revealed to you.
Yes, and I think it's humbly a good book, as they say, to red pill your friends and relatives who won't listen to anything else. That book is all documented. Everything in it is documented, and if they read that, they'll understand how corrupt, in this case, the CIA is, and of course the entire secret government. So it's a good way to open people's eyes. There's some fascinating stuff in there. The CIA allowed me to publish how we recruit agents, how we protect defectors from assassination, but they blocked out the excerpts of the poisoning of my family and the break-ins to our house, things like that.
And of course, that portion of the story is now known, and it's been publicly announced on JFKDallasConference.com that you and I will be meeting there in Dallas later this week for a presentation about the CIA's involvement in the Kennedy assassination. Yeah. So people who are in the Dallas area or want to go there should go to JFKDallasConference.com, and they can catch Kevin's presentation there. We've been invited by Judith Very Baker, so we want to thank Judith for that, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you again. We're seeing a lot of each other lately, Kevin.
We sure are, Jason. I'm looking forward to this one too. I think it's going to be very, very important.
Yeah, and before we wrap it up, because we are almost out of time, I wonder if there was anything that you might want to say. I was so impressed by the Operation Classified conference. I mean, those types of events are so difficult to put on. You know, it's one thing to coordinate and organize a daily show, whether it's on YouTube or Patreon or whatever, but when you start dealing with all those people coming together in a physical location, and you've got hotels and speakers, and they had food and all kinds of things going on. It was so well run. It totally exceeded my expectations in every way.
I'll tell you, Jason, and I wrote John B.'s producer about this. I said it's the best conference I've spoke at, or I sat in on the other speakers, and I'm telling you, a collection of top-notch, brilliant people giving eye-opening talks. It's the best, most well-produced conference I've ever been to.
Yeah, I agree with that. We met a lot of really interesting people. David Heavener, who else was there? The L.A. Mazzulli had some great information. Yeah. Of course, Scott Bennett, some of the people that we've met before were there again, Field McConnell. The Moriartys shared their story about their experiences there in Libya, and what really went on in Benghazi is so shocking that if people knew about it, I just don't know that this criminality would be able to stand.
Yeah, yeah. What a collection of speakers. Sidney Powell was there, gave
Absolutely.
a great talk. Scott Bennett was there. Scott gave a fantastic talk during the out in the conference center there with the main speakers. Just top-notch speakers, experts in their field, and kudos to John B. and Brendy for putting this together, and Jennifer and the others, Jeannie and the others that helped them out, because they really, I know it was a huge endeavor, and they really put together one heck of a professional conference.
Absolutely, and I feel badly if I've left anyone out, because every single person who was there was a huge standout and tons of great information. And Kevin, yes, I also want to thank you for participating in that Patriots Roundtable. That was such a rare opportunity to get all of you guys together, and with Sydney there, you know, she sort of had the lawyer perspective, and you guys were sort of the victims of lawfare. So Sydney's well aware of these things, but she's been on the other side defending people like you, people like Robin, people like Scott, who in each of your cases, you know, obviously your lawyer has suffered physically, personally. Yes. It's quite an ordeal. It's amazing to think that our government is putting good, honest Americans through this kind of, let's call it what it is, it's torture.
Yeah. Yes, my attorney was a hero. I mean, his courage, they beat on him repeatedly for 5 years, and he stood up against them face to face without flinching. As a matter of fact, he had them scared and on the run. But because of that, he's having some health problems now, and the only reason I don't bring him on and I protect his name is he's trying to heal up, because it really took a toll on him.
You know, Kevin, some of the comments here on Patreon, people are asking, how can we get our freedom back? The CIA is a rogue criminal organization that's risen to such unprecedented power. It literally is exactly what the founding fathers of the United States of America wanted to escape from.
It is exactly what they designed the Constitution to escape from. And now it is now in power. It's completely unconstitutional. It's a complete violation of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. What the founding fathers designed and put on paper now they're thumbing their nose at it. They're thumbing their nose at the American people, because there is an elite, both in our government and in the upper echelons of the banking system internationally, that for them, human life is cheap. It's expendable. They'll make bombs, guns, and bullets, and then send men and women to their death or to be maimed and injured, and they really don't care, because people are expendable in their eyes, and it is just it's just an abomination.
It is. Well, Kevin, I'm going to look forward to seeing you there in Dallas later this week, and I know everyone is very anxious to hear what you're going to talk about. You are the only as far as I know, CIA operative to come forward and detail the CIA's involvement in the JFK assassination. So there'll be some new bombshell information that you'll be revealing, and people always enjoy your live presentations. So if anyone's in the Dallas area, they should definitely go to jfkdallasconference.com and book your tickets to get over there and see Kevin. And don't forget to go over to fortheloveoffreedom.net. Purchase the book For the Company of Shadows. It's a great holiday gift, and there's plenty of time to get it. We've got Thanksgiving coming up, so get your Christmas shopping done early and red pill your family. That could be a great way to go. All right, Kevin, thanks very much for another great presentation tonight. Thanks to all of our generous Patreon sponsors. We'll see you next week for another intelligence assessment. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Thank you, guys.